helpless is a really good word. And do you know what I absolutely bloody hated was my 6 month review with my consultant. And the reason why was because I had to go to the hospital. And while I was waiting outside to go in and see him, I was surrounded by other people who had Parkinson's. And the majority of them were worse than me. And once again, I feel bad saying this, but I was surrounded by future me. And I just thought, God, that is future me, and there's no cure.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. Today I'm talking to Scott Hanley in Belfast, Ireland. Today we're talking about his remarkable story of how he reversed 95% of the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. We're going to talk about his diagnosis, some of the symptoms that he had, and the protocol he designed for himself to mitigate the symptoms of Parkinson's. He was diagnosed in 2017. Basically, the doctors told him, well, you just have to deal with this thing. It's progressive, and that's just the way it is. Scott didn't want to take that as an answer, and so he began an intense program of CrossFit training along with cognitive exercises, and he has been able to reverse the symptoms of Parkinson's. It's a remarkable story. It's all about resilience and mindset. There's also a documentary on Scott that CrossFit did when they found out that the training that he was doing with CrossFit training was so helpful to him, and that can be seen on YouTube, and there will be a link in the description. I'm very grateful and honored to talk to Scott Hanley today, and here he is, Scott Hanley. Good morning, Scott. It's great to see you. It is 8 a.m. here. What time is it in Belfast where you are? I didn't ask.
Good afternoon, nearly good evening, Bob. It is 4:20 p.m. here in Belfast, okay, Ireland. First snow of the year has just landed, and it's dark and crispy. Yeah.
Well, I'd stay warm. I hope everything's good there. I'm excited to talk to you. And we had a really nice long talk before we started recording. But the one thing I did not mention, and we're going to be talking about your how you dealt with Parkinson's, is that my father had Parkinson's. So I know quite a bit about it in terms of the symptoms and how it affected my father. So I have a personal interest in this topic because I watched what happened with my dad. He was fortunate in that he did not get symptoms until later in life, probably well into his 70s. So apparently it doesn't advance quite as much or severely the later the onset, but I may be wrong about that. But it was not good. So we're going to talk about, that and how you, I guess the word is resiliency, what you did, which is really out of the box for what doctors, sort of say, which is, oh, there's really not much you can do. It's, that was my sort of experience with it. It's like, well, here's a few things, but not really, it's like, it's going to progress as it progresses and there's nothing you can do. That's basically the way it's looked at. So
that's the initial brief. Yeah.
Right. So I'm talking way too much. Tell the story a little bit about, when you sort of, found out the symptoms and got a diagnosis, and then how you did something quite differently than most people who hear that news.
Sure. Before I start, you're very naughty not telling me about your father. I'm sorry to hear that. But also there's a lot of context here with our conversation, so that's going to make for a good conversation, I think. Is he still with us?
Yes.
Your father?
No, he died a few years ago, but he was 95.
Okay. All
So,
right.
it was he had a good run.
He had a good run.
Although
Okay.
the last number of years he was not in good shape. He had multiple issues besides that, but that was the main one. And um,
Yeah,
the reason I didn't tell
it's
you
pretty.
was not deliberate. It wasn't deliberate. I forgot because we started talking about other stuff, and then as soon as it went, I said, "Wait a minute, I got to say this." So I
No,
wasn't
that's
trying to
fine.
be naughty.
No,
Yeah,
you're not naughty. I think it'll actually make for a much
good
more
word.
animated conversation. So I am 58 years of age, and pretty much this time 7 years ago, I got the formal diagnosis of having Parkinson's disease. But let's go back sort of 6, 9 months prior to that, maybe even further. But I realized that there was something quite not right about my body. Couldn't put my finger on it. I'd had a few other injuries. I had a prolapsed disc, so that gave me referred pain in my left hand, and I sort of got a bit of a twitchy wrist with that. But I kind of just knew that something wasn't quite right. And then the light bulb moment for me was taking the dog out for a walk at night, just round the block, so she could have a pee. And as I turned a corner to come back into our street, my foot just stuck to the pavement. So it's kind of like I've said it in other interviews that it's like you had a big metal boot on and you were caught to a magnet. So I sort of stumbled because I was naturally turning left. There was no pain, there was no discomfort, but my foot just didn't move. And I stared at it. I looked on the pavement or sidewalk, as you guys would call it, and it just didn't move. And about 3 or 4 seconds passed, and then it moved. And I thought that's really, really weird. And that was kind of the moment when I said all those other sort of small things that are going on, that maybe the odd twitch of my wrist, which I put down to maybe a previous prolapse disc, that was kind of the right. There's something definitely not right here. So I went and saw my family doctor, who then very quickly referred me to see a neurologist. And I didn't score particularly badly, but there was something not quite right. There's a few parts of the neurological assessment that I didn't do well in. And he said, "Look, I think to have a bit of empirical evidence that of what we're dealing with here, I'm going to put you through a brain scan." And over here, it's called the DAT scan, dopamine transporter scan. And we'll come back to the how neurology works. And I'm sure the UK and Ireland is in no way different to the US, because there's very little knowledge on the whole disease. But I went and had a brain scan, and then I was told, in due course that yeah, that I'd failed the scan. I don't know if "failed" is the right word to use, but that the evidence was there that I had Parkinson's. It's been interesting. I was on a show a few weeks ago, and I was chatting to a medical doctor, and he said that he would not consider that scan to be empirical evidence. It's somewhat academic because that's what I was told, and I then saw a neurologist, a different neurologist, because the chap I'd been seeing was apparently better off for multiple sclerosis. So I saw a new doctor that I hadn't seen before. And pretty much as you have just said about your father, Bob, they said, "Yep, you got Parkinson's, and we don't know much about it. There's little or no treatment for it. You come back here, we'll get 6 month reviews, and whenever you're bad enough, we'll give you tablets, which effectively are artificial dopamine." Parkinson's disease is a part of your brain is not functioning correctly. It's called your substantia nigra, which is responsible for pushing out dopamine in the right amount and at the right time. Dopamine does a couple of things to your body. A lot of people talk about dopamine now with emotions and stress, etc. But the function of dopamine that impacts Parkinson's is it is It is the stuff, it is the messages, it is the juice that goes around the body that gets anything with motor function to function at the right time, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
my foot hadn't moved, not because there was a muscular problem or not because there was an orthopedic problem. It was just the computer in the top of my bald head had a bit of a misfire. There was a bit of a gremlin up there, so it hadn't fired out the right command. And if it doesn't fire out the right command, then my muscles and my bones don't know to do it. But yeah, so going back to being in that consultation with the neurologist, he said, yeah, there's nothing we can do. It's incurable. It's degenerative. It's just going to progress. You're at level 1. In the UK, they measure it from 1 to 5. I don't know if that's global. So I was caught pretty early. What age was I? So I was 51. And yeah, come back every 6 months. And whenever you're really bad, we'll give you some medication. And whenever you're super bad, you're level 4, I think, probably, we'll put a small hole in your brain and we'll agitate your substantia nigra and let me give it a little prod. And that's called deep brain stimulation, which works brilliantly for people I've spoken to. I met with so many people with Parkinson's over the last 7 years, well, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years since I've become symptom-free. And I just thought, really? Is that it? I'm just going to come here and just wait till I get really bad and there's nothing we can do. So that's a bit of a kick in the teeth, that hit hard for a brief period, but not too long a period, because I pretty quickly decided that I was not going to take the mindset that I was being surrounded by. And whenever I say surrounded, that you get all these leaflets, go onto this website, go onto Parkinson's.org is the UK site, and FAQ, what happens when you're first diagnosed, and the comments were probably what you'd expect. And there's a few things I'm going to say maybe over the course of this interview that might make me sound like not a nice person, and hopefully that's not the case, because it certainly is not my intention. But I read it and I just thought, do you know what? No, I'm shutting that down. I'm not going to immerse myself in that mindset. And that was probably a pretty unconscious decision whenever I do that. But looking back, I remember that so clearly. And God love those poor people who got the diagnosis and were really immobilized by that. But that was absolutely not my first reaction. And I firmly put a lid on that. And I didn't put the lid on it to consciously think, right, I've got a great plan for the next 4 years. That was my response. Does that sound like a bad person, Bob?
Not at all. It sounds like somebody who's willing to go, well, this is what conventional thinking is, but conventional thinking is conventional for a reason. There's also people that are unconventional that have done amazing things. And, to take what another person says as the absolute truth is not always the best way to go. I'm sure you went on a little exploration of, well, my first question would be, is there anyone that's, been able to reverse the symptoms and the effects of this thing? I always try to find the exception myself in situations, because the things I've been taught over the years, a lot of it is bullshit. It's just not true. I don't think the people are wicked for saying it. I think that's what they believe, but it's not like there, there's other ways to do things than, certainly the conventional medical community, they do a lot of great stuff, but they also have limitations. They're taught in a school certain things. Most of that stuff is based on things that were taught before them and before them and before them. So you're looking at pretty much outdated material on a lot of things in the conventional medical community. And I've had doctors tell me this also. Actual MDs go, oh yeah, it's the system is antiquated. We're way behind. And so there's always current research. There's always people. There's always there's always, exceptions to the rules. That's why they call them rules, so we can have exceptions. So obviously you were very curious. My first question is, what causes it? What, or if it's one thing, what are the several things that may cause Parkinson's? It's not I don't think it's a genetic uh, disorder, or I think there may be a genetic predisposition, but I don't think that's what it is. Maybe you can explain a little bit of that and how you arrived at going, I'm going to try something else.
Lots of questions there. Yes.
Yeah,
Can I also say,
I get excited.
I know. Hopefully I'll respond to most of them. First of all, I should have said this at the beginning. I'm in no way medical person. I'm not your guru on this. I'm not a therapist on this. I'm not a medic. Well, as a doctor, I've loads of medical friends in my social circle, but I'm not a medic. I work in finance, so this is just my experience of my journey.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's been a mad journey, but I'll say this now before we sort of got to the punchline. Parkinson's has been a gift to me, which is I know that sentence in isolation, Parkinson's has been his gift, is just batshit crazy thing to say. But it really, really has. And we'll come on to that and why shortly. So yeah, those questions that you asked me, I think probably the first couple of questions that we asked ourselves was, how do you get this? And it was pretty obvious pretty quickly that they don't know. There wasn't really any conflicting evidence there. They don't have a Scooby-Doo. They don't have a clue. They just don't know. And you're right, medicine do amazing things, and conventional medicine does amazing things. Chest, heart, stroke, cancer, where obviously all the money has gone into research because it was the biggest threat to society, right? But you get into neurology and you get into psychiatry, and I think we're still in the dark ages. And medics, MDs have also said that to me. So that was one of the first things I asked myself. And then the next thing that my wife and I discussed were, is it genetic? Can this be a threat to my children? And it was at that point that I quickly discovered that there is wide range of opinions here, but there is no consensus on it. It really depends who you talk to. And my own personal conclusion from all the research and reading that I've done is that it's not genetic. And I think probably at worst, in some camps they say, there's 50-50 chance it might be genetic, but what does that even mean? There's a 50-50 chance, it's either genetic or it's not. And I had a very privileged audience with a Hungarian Canadian medical doctor called Gabor Mate, who's written extensively, be pretty famous in North America. And he very quickly turned around and stated that Parkinson's was not hereditary and genetic. So that was just one person's opinion, but that it was good to hear that. So those are my first two questions that I asked and never really got answered. The second one, and I don't think you'll find medical evidence or a consensus. Yeah, it is this or it is that. What did I do then? I have to be honest here. Yeah, I put the lid on it. I put the lid on I'm not going to have that mindset. I didn't go into growth mindset immediately. Well, definitely not. I think probably most people would call it denial mindset. I just got on with my daily life. I just did stuff, and yeah, shit happens. Okay. I don't know if it's out here on your website or in the information you're pushing out, but my brand, which I just rebranded, is Thrive Happens. Because yeah, shit happens, but what you do with it, we all have a choice with, in my opinion. And I chose to thrive, but I definitely did not do that initially. But I got along with my daily life. Didn't tell the kids. I was able to conceal my symptoms. My symptoms were early stage 1, and they were pretty predictable, so kind of knew what was going to happen when. For 90% of the time. There's a few catastrophic exceptions to that rule, But that's how it went for about 18, 24 months. I let myself go a bit on the nutrition and the diet on exercise and had a few other bits and pieces going on. And if you see a picture of me, if you get onto my Instagram page, I might look like Tony Soprano. Oh, I really did. I was not in good shape. So I didn't deal with it great. Initially. Took me a while. And before we were chatting, or sorry, before we were recording, Bob, we were talking about how desperation can make you act. And I think at some point, and it probably took me 2 years, that I sort of got into the bottom of my slump. Not my mindset, but in how my body was happening. I wasn't depressed with it. I wasn't upset about it. I wasn't stressed or anxious about it. But my symptoms had gone really from level 1 to level 2. So, my hands was a lot more shaky. I had really restless legs, really bad cramps. And I had nightmares, which I still to this day don't understand, but apparently it's really quite prolific and common with Parkinson's. But I just was so sleep deprived. It was horrendous. We're recording this in my office, and before I acted and started to reverse the symptoms, I had to pull my car over 300 yards from my office car park and pull out a business card and put it into my phone. You look at the blue dot, see where my office was, and I know this road for 30 years. So and I thought, oh God, is that Alzheimer's creeping in? Is that sleep deprivation? Life wasn't good. And then the shakes were getting worse, my leg cramps, my sleep deprivation was a big one. I had occasional, thankfully only very occasional urinary incontinence, and a few major blowouts in airports. And God love the people and the grandmother and young children, because I took them all down, just on a complete wipeout, just nothing moved at the right time. And I was going through security, erectile dysfunction. I was not high-fiving much about my life at that point, Bob,
I can imagine. It's surprises too. It's not just this ongoing sort of state. You have these moments where, ooh, I didn't know that was going to happen right then. It's the weird thing about these kinds of conditions that, they can surprise you with something, and you feel so helpless in those moments where you're just like, what just happened? It's like you didn't do it. It was done to you, is how it probably feels like, right? It's just like, oh yeah, what happened?
I don't think anybody deserves any disease, but yeah, helpless is a really good word. And what I absolutely bloody hated was my 6-month review with my consultant. And the reason why was because I had to go to the hospital, and while I was waiting outside to go in and see him, I was surrounded by other people who had Parkinson's, and the majority of them were worse than me. Once again, I feel bad saying this, but I was surrounded by future me. And I just thought, God, that is future me, and there's no cure.
No, I get it. I have a genetic retinal condition, so my eyesight is progressively deteriorating, I guess is the word. And I said to my doctor, I said, he goes, well, he wants to see me once a year. So I was doing that. And I said, if there's no sort of resolve for this thing, because it is a genetic condition, I go, well, I'm not coming to see you. I'm just not going to come every year. Because why do I need to hear the same thing year after year, and there's no thing? So I get it. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to see other people in worse condition. I mean, I function, but I have definitely some challenges because of my eyesight. And one of the weird challenges is I don't look like I have a problem with my eyesight.
No, there's zero evidence of it, Bob.
No, I know. I look completely like okay, but I miss a lot of stuff. My peripheral vision is narrow. Things are blurry. I have missing rods and cones that have died off. So I miss things in my central vision. I don't recognize people a lot if they're a certain distance away. So there's a lot of sort of pieces to it. I can't drive. There's a lot of things that have. So I it's not Parkinson's, but it is a condition that I really can't. I don't think I can do anything about, because the research I've done on it, there isn't anything until supposedly stem cell research advances. The only thing I have not done is get one of these sort of general type of stem cell infusions that they're doing now. I'm curious about if that would help, but I don't know. But we're off on me. Let's go back to you. You're more interesting than me.
Well, I don't know. I was quite interested in that, particularly the stem cell. It'll be really, really interesting to see where that goes. I think that's going to be game changer for so many things. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, so back to the desperation. So I was kind of at the bottom of what became a J-shaped hockey stick curve. And I just thought, and you said about, do I want to come back here every 12 months? I didn't, but I felt obligated. And then it was March 2020. And something happened that knocked the whole world sideways. And that was COVID-19. Yeah. And it then crept into the Western world. And everybody knows, there's nobody on the planet doesn't know what happened then. That was the kick in the pants for me to start acting on it, because I've been doing a lot more research. I had realized that, okay, like these symptoms are bloody awful. And they're really starting to screw up my life. And I started doing a lot more research. And I sort of hit on this one thing, but it was one of those ones I didn't bookmark it. And then I thought I wanted to go back to that. But in summary, I thought or considered, right, if I want to get fit, I used to be pretty fit. I used to be, I'm pretty fit and strong now relative to where I was then. I used to be a British Army officer. So I'm not a sit on the couch and eating Doritos sort of guy, I do that sometimes, of course, but you know what I'm saying? So I just thought, right, if I want to get bigger chest or pecs, I'm going to do bench press. So, I know if I want to get bigger biceps, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do bicep curls. If I want better aerobic fitness and metabolic conditioning, I need to do shit that's going to make me fitter in that regards. Well, if Parkinson's is just a part of my body isn't working properly, my substantia nigra, why not try to exercise the hell out of that? Why not try to make that stronger? Could that be a thing? I then jumped into this with gusto. I really was motivated. I'd come out of that slump. And also the kids were back home and it was COVID. It was kind of mad, crazy time. So everybody did mad shit, didn't they? And in those periods. Well, I did anyway. Most of my friends did. I just started exercising quite intensely. And whenever I say exercising, I don't mean going on a stepper or a cross trainer or a stair machine or spin bike. I was very, very intentional with the exercise that I did. And this was all in my backyard with whatever I had around the house. It was locked down. The stores were all shut. Whatever exercise I was going to do, it was going to make my brain scream as much as my lungs, my muscle. So I wanted to do stuff that I couldn't really do, or I had to really think very intensely while I was doing it to do it efficiently. Okay, and that sort of came from one of the advice, whenever I was first diagnosed, is do new stuff to keep your brain active. It's like learn to knit, learn to play a piano and learn to play a trumpet, so it keeps your brain. So this is kind of I suppose it's the same mindset, isn't it? It's the same logic. So I started exercising where I was listening to instructions. So I was having to think and move fast. So maybe that was in the backyard. Maybe that was with dumbbells. Maybe I was listening to instructions. I had an old punch bag. I got the boxing gloves. That was out in the garage. I hung that up outside and listening to instructions. So I really, really went hard at it. Now, I appreciate I'm going to be talking to a lot of people. People are going to be hearing this. And just like your father, they're in their 70s and I was only 51. But I think any level of intensity is the possibility of improving this. We'll hopefully talk more about that in a minute. With some of the experience of people I've met since this crazy journey of mine has sort of become public. I also time restricted eating, where my body fasted. my intention for that was to lose a bit of weight, to make my exercise capabilities better, to improve that. I now know that fasting has other benefits, which I was totally unaware of. I was pretty unaware of all of it. This was just Scott giving it his best go. So try to cut down the shitty carbs, the starchy stuff, the sugar. It was a lockdown. I wasn't great at cutting out the booze, if I'm being honest. And but I just did this, and because it was lockdown, everybody had lots of time. Where was I going to? I wasn't going out with friends. I wasn't going into the office, you know. And about 4 or 5 months in, I just thought, oh my goodness, my symptoms have really, really improved here. That was really, really exciting. And you keyboard warrior, you get onto Google, all that stuff. And then it does say, yeah, sort of whenever you go from level one or stage one to stage two Parkinson's, sometimes it pauses. I've heard people call it the honeymoon period of Parkinson's, the Parkinson's honeymoon period, where you just get a nice little sweet spot where symptoms don't deteriorate. I thought, well, is it that? Could it be that? But then I was pretty sure it wasn't, because not only had things not gotten worse, shit that was happening 3, 4 months ago had stopped happening. And I was pretty sure that I wasn't in a honeymoon period. I was pretty certain that things were starting to go in reverse symptom wise. So I kept at it. And obviously getting those results filled me with enthusiasm and optimism, Bob. And I kept at it. And then whenever the gyms were allowed to open and all that COVID and lockdown nonsense restrictions was lifted, I then went and joined CrossFit gym. And a friend of mine had done CrossFit, been a bit of a CrossFit bore for years. And I didn't know that much about it, but I knew that it was probably a good place to go to dial up the intensity of what I was doing. Most importantly, and this is the really significant part, is I was doing stuff that I couldn't do. So I was challenging my cognitive capacity, which is what I've been doing for, I don't know, like 9 months at that time, or 10 months. So yeah, working hard, but really, really testing my neuro system, my cognitive capacity. That was my whole plan. And I started doing CrossFit. Yeah, I was right. I had no bloody clue what I was doing. It was really, really hard. It was good to be part of a community and a tribe. And I think I'm a big fan, a big advocate of, not working from home and get people back into work, because humans just, well, maybe not the odd computer programmer friend I've got, but normal people, they need to be part of a community, and they perform so much better in a community. And certainly I did. So like literally, I think that was April, I started a CrossFit. I loved it. I loved the people. Of course, everybody had been locked up with all the coronavirus nonsense. So everybody was very buoyant, and I met amazing people. I didn't tell them about my Parkinson's, but at Halloween, so I was only there, yeah, like 5, 6 months maximum. All my symptoms had gone, everything. And it was at that point I sort of fessed up. I confessed to the owners of the gym and the main coaches now at CrossFit Belfast. I said, yeah, that medical disclosure form I signed in April, there's a few parts missing to it. Yeah, it's 3 years ago now. I'm pretty sure I've been symptom-free since.
Amazing. You turned it around in like a year, less than a year, about a year.
Yeah, shit. I've not really thought about it like that. Yeah, no, I did. Yeah.
That's astonishing. I mean, and I'm sure the doctors went, what's going on, or this is impossible, or maybe you didn't have it, or who knows what they
oh yeah said. Yeah. I'm maybe some of your listeners, and I mean, you saw Parkinson's with your father, so you were a carer to a degree. I don't know to what degree, and people might say that, but what I do know is that I had 3.5 years of, I couldn't do that more than 4 times. So I'm clicking my fingers if people are listening and not watching. That was the acid test. That was my litmus test with my neurologist. My hand shaked. I'd been in a meeting and lift my mobile phone to look at the calendar. It would just like fly across the boardroom. I would stumble on the road because my foot had stuck. Like I said, I had urinary incontinence, I had erectile dysfunction. I didn't sleep. I had all so many classic symptoms of Parkinson's. I don't know what I did, but I had it for three. I had all that shit for 3 to 4 years, and I don't know.
God, that is
So
just the most wonderful
I say
thing.
I say I'm pretty sure I have it. I've had one or two twitches in my hand, but CrossFit, I lift heavy things, and I sometimes get muscle fatigue. Now, there's something happened in about 3 4 months ago, and I was just lying in bed. I thought, oh, is that a twitch? But it might just have been muscular skeletal because I deadlifted at 170 kilograms or whatever it was, 165 kilograms. So to me, I'm still sitting free from certainly from the motor function stuff.
This is what I'm sort of getting from what you're saying, that there is an effect that the exercise, the type of exercise you're doing, there's the physical strength that you're getting. There's the release of, what the body releases when we exercise, which is great. You always feel good after you exercise. But
Sure.
the way you were doing it and the types of exercise that you were doing were mentally challenging. And so tell me if I get this right. So the combination of the two things had a synergistic effect where not only was your body being exercised, but your brain, that part of your brain was also being exercised by the things you were doing in the gym. And it sounds like outside the gym too, that you were doing some basically sort of motor skill things and cognitive things and tapping into, you said you studied piano. So that, the musical piece of that's a sort of an interesting thing about the brain, how it processes music and how music affects the brain and the rest of the body. So it sounds like you were coming at this not even with that much specific knowledge of how it would work because you didn't know, but there was some intuitive thing that was going on where it's almost like your intuition and your desire came together to fit all these pieces together to turn this thing around. It's a real testament to what the human body is capable of doing when challenged with something like that.
Yeah, no, that's a very accurate summary. Yeah, totally agree with everything you said there. And at the time I was playing with it, and I wasn't fully conscious of what I was doing in all regards. But looking back, I'm gonna come on to my life the last couple of years post media, getting hearing my story and what's happened with people that I've come across. And I've become very, very informed about this because I've had a lot of immediate attention. I've made myself very open and very available to Parkinson's people. But I know that mindset, that initial mindset, that growth mindset, not having that default of having a negative bias or, I'm always just going to pursue something to get a confirmation bias that, oh yeah, I do have that, so I can't do that. I would totally, but it's my opinion that for Scott Hanley, that's what worked. That's what made most of the difference for Scott Hanley. That's where it starts. And I think anybody that wants to, nothing to do with Parkinson's or chronic illness, but if you want to thrive in whatever you want to thrive in, whether that's at work or at home or life or sport or achievement or a hobby, I am 100% of the belief that it starts with your mindset.
And that's a huge thing, isn't it?
It is. And going back to Gabor Mate, and if you're not aware of him, I really would encourage you and your listeners to.
I'm very aware of who that is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that chat, whenever I was with him in the summer, and he's a medical doctor, but he would be quite outspoken about conventional medicine. And he would say that I couldn't understand why I'd been invited to the event, but the event organizer had been talking to me over the previous 6 months because of my story. So I didn't really understand why I'd been invited along to this event. But then with listening to the first 5 minutes, he just stands up and says that, conventional medicine just wants to fix one part of you. So you've got an orthopedic surgeon who's really good at right ankles, but he's not really good at left ankles. And it all starts with the brain, and the brain and what's happened to your, to you as a person psychologically via the brain and the body are always 100% connected. And yet, there isn't a medical school in the Western world or North America or Western Europe and North America that teaches that, you know? They don't teach that. So the amount of stress you've had, the amount of trauma you've had, like bad stuff that happens to us, an awful lot of that is either because of or made worse by trauma, stress, and what has happened to you. And just people don't talk about the brain and the mindset. Well, it's not talked enough. Lots of people are talking about it. Conventional medicine, it's just not a thing yet. I'm funny, at my CrossFit gym just about 2 weeks ago, there's quite a lot of surgeons. My gym's right beside two of Belfast's biggest hospitals. And there's quite a lot of surgeons in the early morning class that I do. And I was chatting to one guy, no, and I'm not going to mention any names here, but I sort of said to this, I referenced this. I said, well, what about this brain and your body being connected? And is that not relevant? And I just said, no, I only want to know about, I just want to be brilliant in, let's say it was, the left ankle or the right knee or whatever it was. And he just had no interest in it. Like this conversation was, he wasn't even open to conversation,
Right, because you upend everything he's been taught, and it shakes those people to the foundation that maybe I don't know as much as I think I know, and that everything that I've been taught.
But he'd be brilliant, and he knows how to fix that right toe or the left eye. Yeah,
those guys are great for that stuff, but it's why does one have to exclude the other? That's the weird part to me. It's like. It's like
totally.
What if it helps? What if it is there's a chance of that? At least investigate it and dismiss it if you don't think it's don't dismiss it before. I mean, what do they say? It's contempt prior to investigation. Not a great way to move through life. You at least want to check it out.
But I think medicine is moving. I think it is moving. It's starting to move, and the US is going to really lead that in North America, because obviously over here, Belfast is in Ireland, but we're part of the United Kingdom, and we're therefore benefit from the National Health Service. So we effectively have one healthcare provider, and it's free. It's a bit broken in parts, but generally it does amazing, amazing things. So, but they're never going to do anything that's going to be overly adventurous. They're going to want a 7-year trial on this paper. It's going to come out of the US, and is my opinion, because you have the ability to be more nimble there. And you just think the amount of talk there is about the gut biome, that is now starting to enter mainstream medicine, surely, is it not?
Yeah, yes, a lot more actually. There's a whole sort of because of this podcast, I'm immersed in this kind of stuff, and people come to me to be on the show that are on the edge of these things. I don't know if the people across the street don't know about it. The people down the street don't know about it because they don't explore it, but it is there. And it's, there's a lot of things going on with, like you say, gut health, brain health, genetic testing for finding out where some of your predispositions are. And maybe you can, the earlier I think that you catch something or realize something, the more you can do to not have it become a problem later. That's sort of I think the best case scenario of knowledge. Like you found out about about Parkinson's at level 1, which is great. So you were able to do certain things that if you had waited, and not done anything for all those years, you'd probably not be in the kind of shape you're in today.
And so why did I do that? Curiosity. I think you've got to be curious. I don't think ignorance, anything in life, you can't use ignorance as something to hide behind. You've got to be curious. Well, in my opinion, one should be curious and be informed. Make a decision on anything from an informed position. Instagram's quite good for some of the Parkinson'S stuff. I would use that as a bit of a source, and I follow a lot of people And anyway, I basically thought I'd made a comment on an individual's post. Okay. And I said, oh, well done. Keep at it. I've been doing XYZ. I've got no symptoms now and haven't for 18 months. Keep at it and best of luck. Right. And what it turns out I'd done was that CrossFit Global as an organization had reposted Daphne's story. You following this? Yeah. So I'd actually
Yes.
commented it to CrossFit post, not to an individual's post. But I was not aware of that because I'm old, etc. A bit more confident with that stuff now, but work in progress. And literally about 20 minutes later, ding, hi Scott, this is such and such from CrossFit. Just put your comment. This is really interesting. You're a member of CrossFit, I see, yada, yada, yada. Could we set up a call? And I went, oh, yeah, okay. I thought I was talking to Daphne. And so we set up a call, it was scheduled for a couple of days later. And they said that, we would like to do a piece on this. Because it's a good story, but I mean, the cynics would say, yeah, well, maybe it makes them look good, right? So they did a piece on .com on their website, and then they then did a longer sort of more, let's call it a documentary, which runs for about 19, call it 20 minutes. And that was sliced up into reels on Instagram. And some of those were getting, 6, 7 million views. And I intentionally, it was a hard decision because I knew I was going to be surrounded by future me. But I then made myself available to people. So if people saw the story, I made it very easy for them to contact me. So that was a bit of a roller coaster ride. But the great thing that achieved was it very quickly made me realize that I was not the only person to have experienced this, Paul. There was Sally in England, there was some chap in Canada, there was a guy in France, there was in America said, "Oh yeah, no, I have Parkinson's. I do that. It's reversed my symptoms. It's slowed my symptoms down." Or I'm also medication free. So it kind of validated it to me that I'm not a freak and that I'm not an imposter. This shit is real, and that was good. And also great that maybe there is a bit of a magic sauce here that let's get talking about that. So I then had sort of 12, 18 months in the BBC, and there was just a lot of media coverage. And I got to chat with and meet some amazing, amazing people, And there's one lady in Wales, which is this part of the United Kingdom. And Jules was like diagnosed at 27. She was stage 4, going into stage 5. She was probably entering terminal. And in her late 20s, Jules, if you're listening, I've got the numbers wrong here. Apologies. But like she was a bloody mess, absolute mess. Totally, totally debilitated. No, barely functioning, no quality of life. And she has done what I've done. Now she's still very symptomatic, but she's amazing. And she had through CrossFit, and she got to the CrossFit Games, which is basically like, the World Cup, the Olympics of it. And she competed and ended up on the podium. And 5 years ago, like she was wheelchair, totally incapable of any, pretty much every basic functional living.
So young.
So young.
I was just thinking, as you were talking about, all these different people, and I was thinking about my dad, and the thing that he said to me that really was that really got to me in a way that because I try to put myself, you try to put yourself in the other person's place so you can have empathy and feel what they're feeling. And he said to me, my life is one of constant frustration for the things I can't do. And I was like, oh, that feeling must be so, you're like trapped in this body that's not doing what you want it to. He had to, just to get up and go get a drink of water was a big deal. To use a walker, and he
Yeah.
had to drink water that had a thickener in it, so he didn't aspirate because of his, that was affected. He was a voracious reader, and he couldn't remember. He'd read 2 pages and forget what he read, so he had to stop reading. He was a guy that would have had like 2, 3 books going all the time, my whole life. And so all these things started to fall away, and it's heartbreaking to see that. And he was like, he didn't really want to, his quality of life was crap. He didn't want it anymore, but he says, I'm not sick enough to die and I'm not well enough to live. So he was trapped. And it was a really hard thing to see, obviously when it's somebody you love, it's even harder. But to know now, that there's a way, and
Well,
I'm
I,
not
I,
saying
I
that
don't know.
this,
I don't know if it was a way for your father, and as you say
it
that,
might not have been. There might
yeah,
not have been, but for others, I'm saying I don't know if there was a way for him. It may
yeah.
have been too
So
late in life, or and maybe this doesn't help everyone. What you're saying, but
no,
if
no,
if
it definitely does. It definitely does not. Um, Not to the extent that it's helped me. So let me put a bit of substance to that statement. And what you just said there did make me feel two things. Well, first of all, a wee bit of an imposter syndrome because I never got that bad. Um,
well,
and then
you're not an
obviously it's a bit,
imposter.
and
You're not an imposter.
and then it gets back to the future me because of my situation. Yes, I've been seen by more than one neurologist, and there's a degree of interest, and I've had my brain scanned, and since I've been symptom free, what shows up in the DAT scan is unchanged. So their diagnosis would be the same. So I'm a bit of a I'm a bit of an enigma as to what the hell's going on there. I have, like I said, I've spoken to quite a lot of people. Some of them face to face, some of them digitally, as you and I are at the minute, and including my own gym, which is a small gym. CrossFit gyms are small, and so there's a man there who's been coming, training really hard, 6, 7 months, and his symptoms he doesn't feel have progressed, but they haven't reversed. But there's other people that have spoken to me that they have been able to dial down their medication, which is a huge plus for them. And because, as you're probably aware, then from your father, people, excuse me, who are reliant on medication, they have what's known as on time. So when the meds are working, they can function well. So they can go out and have that game of golf. They can do stuff with their kids. They can cook. They can work. But whenever they're in their off time, and Michael J. Fox would talk about this quite a lot, then they're not really very capable of doing very much.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I never got to that, but technically I've yet to get to that stage. So technically I still have Parkinson's. Will I become more debilitated by it? The conventional medical answer on that is yes, definitely. But I'm probably in my head, I probably do think, yeah, that it will impact me again. But maybe it won't. I've had 4 years symptom free, so maybe I just spread that out over 25 years rather than have it compressed into 12. Or maybe, hell, Bob, I'm just not going to get it. It's just not going to deteriorate. Or maybe medication or medical science will change that, or stem cell research.
And let me ask you this: are you doing any type of nutritional supplementation in addition to probably it seems like you changed your diet a little bit or a lot? Are you doing any nutritional things? Supplementation, I mean, like vitamins and.
Yeah, I just take basic stuff.
Okay.
B12 multivitamin, magnesium. It's supposed to help sleep. My
It
sleep wasn't
does.
great long before Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
And then a probiotic for gut health. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
that's massively significant. Yeah, I think it's really important that what you don't put into your body is of more relevance than your supplements. So if you stay away from sugar, I mean, if you have any understanding or comprehension about how the body digests food and how it gets its energy, you would realize that pretty much 80% of what the shit that people put in their bodies is either sugar or ultra processed or starchy carbs, which your body's going to convert to sugar.
Yeah.
And then, if you don't exercise, then you got all this sugar rattling around your system and you're not burning it off. So, the body's got to put it somewhere. Hello, type 2
Yeah.
diabetes.
How do people get a hold of you and watch the documentary that's on you? Let's have all things Scott Hanley put out there right now.
Well, I mean, Scott Hanley, if you drop my name into Google, does Google probably works geographically? It'll probably bring up a lot of the UK stuff. Well, here it brings up a lot of UK stuff. I think if you want to hear the real story, the start to finish, and put my name into YouTube, just put in my name,
Okay.
and you'll get a short 20-minute documentary that is basically my story.
That sounds great. Thanks for being on the show. I really, I could talk to you for 5 more hours, but
I know
we can't do that. Yeah.
No, it's been great, Bob, and it'd be great to hear from any of your listeners. And maybe we'll come back, be doing an update on some of your listeners that have had similar experience. Wouldn't that be amazing?
I would love to hear that. If anybody down the road is listening and you're taking this to heart and changing things, I'd love to hear about it. Boy, would I love to hear about that. And I'm sure Scott would too. Have a fantastic evening. I'm going to say evening because it's 5.
Yeah, it's like 5:30 p.m. That's a sign off. You have
dark and snowy, huh? Dark and snowy.
Snowy.
Huh.
Yeah, we got snow. We don't normally get snow this time of year, but yeah, dark and snowy. And you've probably got. I don't even know because we're Celsius. So you've probably got sunshine and blue skies and warmth. Have you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's pretty much the standard LA day. It's bright and sunny most of the time here.
Yeah. Ain't life hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, you too. Have a great one. Thank you. Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. You can also listen on YouTube. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Scott Hanley for being on the show. Have a fantastic day. Thank you.